Switched on IT is proudly brought to you by Oz Hosting, Cloud Made Easy.
Welcome to Switched on IT. I'm Barry. This is the show where we talk about everything IT. We have had a very interesting year in 2020, not just here at Switched on IT, but around the world. Lots of controversy, lots of problems, but we have on Switched on IT, we've covered lots of subjects to do with coronavirus. Now, we are now drawing towards the end of the year, and so the 2020 season of Switched on IT is now coming to a close. So we have three more, including today. We have three more sessions of Switched on IT. And then next year, when we come back for the 2021 season of Switched on IT, we're actually going to pick up the same topic that we're on, that we will be on today, and for the next 2 weeks. And we'll pick that up and begin next year's season from where we leave off here. Now, the topic that Doug and Ray are going to tackle over the next couple of weeks and then into early next year is a topic to do with social media and how to use social media effectively. Ray Sidney Smith, who is our resident expert in the United States, is going to talk about the things that drive social media, and he has over the years developed a plan for how this plays out, and he's going to share that with us. Now, Doug and Ray are with us now. Good morning, Doug Endersby from Sydney.
Good morning, Barry.
And good morning, or your evening actually, Ray Sidney Smith in, where are you in Pennsylvania today?
I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Ray, what is it about social media that we need to be talking about in order to make sure that social media is not just an appendage to what we do, that we're actually engaging and seeing it as a significant part of the marketing of what we do and how we engage with people?
Sure. So I tend to characterize social media as not a part of marketing, but a part of business. It actually is, its tentacles, kind of like an octopus, stretches across many different parts of the operations of a business, not just in marketing. The important part to think about when we talk about social media marketing, though, is that when we look at social media marketing, it is not really all that different than any other type of marketing, except for its increased need to embrace what we already know. And by what I mean by that is that many times we think of social media as being some kind of, boogeyman, that it's some kind of scary entity that we don't understand, when in reality, it is social media. At its most basic core, it is just content that we are using in a social way. And it turns out that if you are capable of interacting with other people on the planet, then you are a social creature like the rest of us. We're humans, we're social creatures. And so you already know how to socialize. You already know how to be social with people. All you need to do is use content online to do that. And so what I tend to kind of proffer, the way in which I teach the social media kind of concept is within the digital marketing success strategy, and talking about the fact that if we just use the things we already know, which is that Doug is here next to me virtually, but Doug has a brain, he has a heart, he's got a heart and mind, right? And I am a human, and I have a brain, I have a heart, I have a heart and mind. And all we're doing through this process is connecting with another heart and mind across digital technology. If we use the human-centered approaches we use to connect people, then we are going to be better off. And that's the whole premise. Stop all of this, social media guru nonsense that I hear about all the time, and just start connecting with people in real ways. And then it becomes less of an issue of how many followers do I have and how am I going to be able to use and build up the number of X and Y on my social media. All of that stuff is pretty, is downstream from the real fundamentals of being successful in social media, which is being able to connect with human beings on the other side of what is a digital bridge. All social media is a bridge digitally between other hearts and minds. And if you're capable of communicating to humans, then the technology parts can be learned.
Very true, Ray. And I think it's interesting that your framework that you're tackling this discussion with is a behavioural science framework, because certainly behavioural science in the world has come a hell of a long way. It's moved on from being something which is sort of theoretical and not supported by data and data sets and having hard data behind it. It's now become something that we know so much more about. We've got such big data sets about behavioural science, and we were talking just before we were going in about the communication process and the three different, types of activity that you need to engage in. So if I can just sort of, kick us off with what you were saying before, and that was social media is all about having the typical human conversations and how humans react. And so, you were saying initially that one of the first things is listening. And of course, we know how human beings interact. One of the most important things is to understand who you're communicating with, understand what their needs and wants and desires are. And so listening is a key part of that. And so social media is about using what is available in social media to listen, and we can obviously expand on that. And then the next element in a social interaction is going to be, the speaking, which is the outbound communications. And obviously this is going to be, very much an iterative process, because we listen and we speak and we listen a bit more and we speak a bit more. And it's understanding how all that is going to work. And I think, and this is clear in the context of the election that we've all witnessed from afar, and you've been in the thick of, it's then the part of belonging, and it's incredible how strong those senses of belonging can be when the listening and the speaking quality that precedes that has been, of such good quality. And I think, we won't go into this now, but sadly, I think there is a lot of listening and speaking that is going on, which has not been accurate, but it's got people belonging to I guess, some positions that aren't supported by fact. But of course, we're not about that in our business communications. We always want to be, accurate and sincere, and certainly deliver on the claims that we put behind our products and our services. But I thought, that is a fabulous framework that you've proposed there. So maybe we can kick off, or dig a little bit deeper by exploring the listening component, and what are the best ways to listen, and what does it look like when I'm using social media and I'm listening?
Sure. So I usually try to take this from the kind of Dr. Stephen Covey perspective. You seek first to understand before trying to be understood. You really want to use the 2 ears to 1 mouth ratio, and really start to understand that this is an active process. Listening is not a passive process. You actually have to pay attention. And just going to a little bit of science here, when you are listening, you are taking in so much data that you can almost do nothing else. Our conscious mind has to do a lot of work in order to listen. And so it's taking up a large part of our conscious processing power when we are listening. And this is one of the powers of why podcasting in podcast marketing is so powerful, because podcasts are this auditory experience. When we are listening in the digital world, what we're really doing is we're doing 2 steps. The first stage in the digital marketing success strategy is really the idea of going out there and searching. That is, you are looking for conversations that are happening about your business, about your industry, about the key players in your business. That can include you as well. And starting to pay attention to what are the conversations being had about you, about your products, about your services, and about potentially products and services that are competitors and otherwise. You're just basically doing market research, right? That's the first real major listening step. And you need to do that not only on general search, that is Google, Bing, and otherwise, but also doing that in a social search perspective. What is being said on social media platforms about these topics, and what is engaging people in emotional ways? So I frequently talk about this notion that emotions are what drive action and decisions. So we want to make sure that we're understanding what gets people to have emotional responses, both positive and negative. Apathy is actually the enemy, and so we don't want people to like, for example, if I said, "Hey, Doug, I want everybody at Oz Hosting to just all your customers just be apathetic about you," right? Like that's not a thing you want. You don't want people to be apathetic about Oz Hosting. You want people who love the product, who love the services that are being provided. And more importantly, when there are people, and it's always a minority, when those people hate your services, right? When they dislike something that happens, then they stand out. And that allows you to be able to say, hey, what happened here? And how can we fix this so that in the future, we have more delighted customers? So in social media, we really want to pay attention to what people are doing positively and negatively emotionally. And that's what we call sentiment or sentiment analysis. We want to know that information, and it takes really good listening to be able to do that. So that's kind of the first step there. And then there's kind of a secondary step, which is the ongoing process. After you get through speaking, connecting, and otherwise, listening in that second stage, which is the ongoing process, we are going out there and we're actually looking for conversations that are happening where we as the business owners can engage in the conversation and add value. This is why listening, speaking, and connecting is founded on this idea of giving, getting, and then creating a sense of belonging. Okay, giving is listening because we are going to someone else's, profile, someone else's blog, someone else's space where they are themselves speaking, and we are doing the listening by engaging in the conversation in the comments. And in social media, we're just having a conversation and we're providing value in that space. So that first step is listening, is to go out there and do the market research. But then the ongoing process of listening is the idea of going out there and providing value, adding value to other people's social media profiles so that more people find out who you are and what you have to provide in terms of value, and that starts to grow your audience. Does that make sense, Doug? Any questions there?
No, that makes perfect sense to me.
And so moving along then to the idea of speaking, this is the idea of getting, and where do your thoughts come to when you think about it?
I was just going to say, before we move on from the listening, tell us just a little bit more about the different channels, social media channels, that you would be extracting information from, and what would a business owner or their assigned person for this particular task be doing?
So this is where it actually becomes a...
Yeah, good question. Doug, I was sitting here thinking to myself, what does this actually look like in terms of the social media platforms that we're talking about, and does it look different on different platforms?
Looking for exposure for your next event or function? Take your next community event, training seminar, sports event, official opening, function, concert, or exhibition live to the world with PTV Channel O and Power FM's unique live simulcast. We can turn your next local event into a worldwide sensation for a fraction of what you would expect to pay. No matter what the event, PTV Channel O and Power FM can take your message to our audience. Invite the world to your party by phoning 0431 390 920 or email feedback@ptvchannelo.com. Check out the Plainland Country Markets on the third Sunday of each month from 7 a.m. till 12 noon next to the Plainland Hotel. There's plenty to do to keep you occupied. Browse the soaps, candles and crafts, plus the variety of plant stalls. The mobile dog wash will be on site. Get your furry friend washed while you have a wander around. Take a break and enjoy the sausage sizzle and an espresso coffee. So bring the kids, the dog, in fact the whole family to the Plainland Country Markets the third Sunday of each month next to the pub at Plainland.
Join Crazy Kev and myself for all the fun at the launch of Gatton and the Lockyer Valley's very own radio station, Power FM, with an outside broadcast from Spano's IGA Arcade in Gatton. We have a stack of vouchers up for grabs, and just by being there, you could be a winner. It all kicks off 10 a.m. Thursday the 19th of November. If you can't make it, then lock your radio dial onto 87.8 FM in Gatton, and for the Lockyer Valley, we'll be live at www.powerfmradio.com.au, then click on Power FM Lockyer Valley. Hope to see you there.
Power FM is total entertainment. From the morning drive with Fiona and Jeff to the drive home with Jeff Black. On the weekends, catch the Crazy Kevin Show, Dennis Mitchell's Breakfast with the Beatles, the Semi-Pro Sports Show, and Racing Nation with James O'Shea, plus the music you grew up with. Keep your radio dial locked on Toowoomba's Power FM, celebrating 10 years. You'll find us at 88.0 on the FM dial or online at www.powerfmradio.com.au.
Drought, fires and flood have made running a business in regional Australia hard work. Each week on PTV Channel O, On the Spot will bring you a business that's doing it tough out there and share their stories of struggle and success. Find out who's doing what they offer, and how they can help you for your next project, adventure, vacation or night out. On the Spot, every Thursday at 7 p.m. on ptvchannelo.com, or download the PTV Channel O app and take us with you wherever we go. Discover a whole new world of entertainment at ptvchannelo.com.
That's a good question.
Yeah, so every platform is going to look a little bit different in terms of search, but search is search. If you're searching for something on Twitter, you go to the search box on Twitter. If you're on LinkedIn, you type a search into the LinkedIn search box. And you're gonna find different things in those different places. I tend not to focus too much on the activities of specific networks when we talk about the framework and the strategy itself, because we get lost in the technological idiosyncrasies of Twitter versus Facebook versus LinkedIn versus Snapchat and otherwise. The point is that these are activities that every business needs to do, and then you can learn the particulars of those. When we think about this from a perspective of the role that you're going to do, you're going to be searching across many different platforms in order to do this kind of listening activity. The point is that you actually have to make some hypotheses, right? Again, going back to science, right? We make some hypotheses to run an experiment, and we decide, okay, is this likely to be a place where my audience is, and what are the likely things that someone who was just a person in your audience, a target market, someone who's your buyer persona, an avatar, that kind of thing, would type in to find my business. And what you do is you just start doing those searches, right? You just start searching Google, you start searching the various aspects of topics on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook and otherwise, and you start doing those searches to find what topics will surface when you type in those searches. If you're already in business, if you're a going concern, then you're trying to do searches and see whether or not you're found in those searches and what types of conversations crop up. That's really the first step here fundamentally in terms of things. And then, of course, once we get into that second phase, which is once we've really set up the strategy for listening, speaking, and connecting, we then double back and we, on an ongoing basis, are going into those places where we found conversations, pools of people, groupings of people that are having these conversations. We're then engaging in those conversations. So in practical terms, we're just commenting and asking questions inside of the profiles as well as groups where we know our audience already exists.
Yeah. Terrific. So I just wanted to sort of understand there's a practical, easy step that people will be executing, and I totally agree. We won't do a deep dive into every social media platform and what that is. Then we've got the speaking component, and obviously that's where we're trying to be useful. I guess it's important in that outbound communication process not to be too salesy. So what are your recommendations about that? How does that look? How do you sort of structure your conversations?
Just before you go there, Ray, Let me just ask a question that I was thinking of before. When we talking about science, when we think about an activity like reading, one of the things that we know from the research about reading is that when you read, you need to know what your purpose is in reading before you begin reading, so that you can extract the information that you want. So you don't read, for example, a textbook in the same way that you read a novel, because you're not looking for the same kind of information. Now, is that also true when we come to the listening part for social media? Do we need to know what our purpose is on different platforms before we begin listening, so that we're going to extract the right information?
So this is done in the context of marketing. So when we're thinking about this, we already know that we're doing this in the context of market research. So some things that businesses should understand is who is their buyer persona, who is their ideal buyer, or the set of ideal buyers that they know are coming to their business or will come to their business once they are open. And they want to know generally where people fit in the customer journey. That is, where do people come into contact with social media in that process, and it's usually either early on or some further way along down the funnel that they come into contact with social media. And so with that in mind, we're looking for things with purpose. We're not just doing searches for no reason, but the idea here is that there's a bit of a discovery process that happens while you're searching for things, which is why I always say start searching for the things that are pretty practical. What is someone going to type in to find you? What are the kinds of problems, the felt needs and wants that they will type into a social search engine like Twitter, go into the search field and type in a question, type in a comment, type in a hashtag, and what will they find when they type in those hashtags where you perceive that someone will find you? And that's a very broad spectrum of searches that someone can do to find you. It could be that I was in, for me, for instance, I've been on an interview recently on a podcast. That's a way someone could find me. They're on a completely different podcast than my own. It could be that someone types in that they're looking for web hosting and they want a recommendation in terms of a really great web host for their business. It could be someone who needs some digital marketing assistance or some question about productivity technologies. There are a lot of avenues by which someone can find me because I produce content in a lot of different verticals. So my way in which I would search and do that social listening for myself is going to be very different than other businesses. So you kind of have to archetype for yourself how you want to be found and how you could be found, and then start looking at the sentiment of the people posting.
Okay, so now let's now come back to your question, Doug.
So yeah, I was asking about. Okay, so we're now in the speaking phase. We've done a lot of listening, and my sort of sense was, well, you don't want to make the whole conversation too salesy. That's going to be a turn off for people. So how, what are your recommendations in terms of structuring and managing the outbound communication, and bearing in mind that it would be a very it's going to be quite iterative, because you're going to be responding to input rather than just broadcasting something.
Yeah, I think most businesses come at this without an understanding that their social media marketing must have a sales strategy in mind. We are directing traffic typically from social media to a website or a blog, a podcast, a video channel, or some other kind of consistent content that's out there. It could be to a landing page that is a lead page. And so lead pages are pages that have a single and singular call to action on that page. And so if it is a piece of social media content, let's use a blog as an example. If I'm doing speaking, the blog becomes my content marketing hub. That's where it's kind of my soapbox. And if I'm going to be writing a blog post, say every week, that is my soapbox. And so now my job is to be able to distribute that blog widely across the social media platforms where I know my target audience congregates, right? And again, we're using all of this language that is very similar to what we do in the real world. Why? Because social media is in many ways just like the real world. So if Doug and I are in the same room with Barry, we are congregating. This is what people do in social media. We are congregating around content. If Doug and Barry and I are having a conversation in the same room, that is social content, right? That is the idea of us having a conversation. We're just utilizing this around a specific topic. So what I always say about speaking is that speaking is the idea of getting, because you're putting content onto your blog or your website in some way, shape, or form, and you are receiving traffic from it by putting out there posts on Twitter, posts on LinkedIn, posts on Snapchat, and otherwise, and letting people know that this content exists, this deeper content that they can access by going to the blog. Now, if there isn't a sales strategy in mind, then all you're doing is sending people to your blog to read it and go away. So there needs to be a sales process in mind, right? We need to figure out what the funnel is, and we need to know how to capture people and bring them into the fold. But just from the social media perspective, social media marketing component is I'm speaking consistently to my audience so that they know that I'm there and they don't forget that I exist. Because not everybody wants to buy from you today. So you need to be able to have consistent content out there so that when someone is ready to buy, that they remember you exist and they know how to find you. And that means you have to have memorable content, valuable enough content that they want to either subscribe to your blog, sign up for your email newsletter, go ahead and be aware of you enough that when they go to find you again to buy, they are going to find you and be able to do so. And so speaking is the idea of consistently putting out good content that gets people to remember you and to also value you as either a subject matter expert or at least someone who is trustworthy enough to continue to receive that content. Does that make sense, Doug?
That makes absolute sense. So I guess that's the in a sense that connecting with people and to pick up on your comments earlier about creating that belonging and that affinity with the organisation, because it's delivering some value. It's promising to scratch the itch that the customer has, and they'll keep coming back. And I think certainly in our business we experience that quite frequently, where we're talking to customers when they finally reach that stage where they convert and become a customer. And we find out that they had their first conversation with us 18 months ago. And you think, wow, they've sort of kept it in the back of their mind that at some point they're going to have to make some changes. And small businesses that we deal with typically, they don't actually make a change until something is hurting them and bothering them, or something's broken. And then they go, oh yeah, well, we've been meaning to do something about that. We wanted to get our email onto this particular platform or whatever it is, and they'll jump on our chat line, and the funny thing is, that whole thing about belonging, they expect to be remembered, which is often quite difficult. But I guess that is one of the great aspects of social media, that you're able to, potentially, if you wish, and some of the tools we use, we can go back, and if we've got their email address or something like that, we can actually see when the first conversations were initiated. And, that's often quite surprising, but it's also good information, because we can see, that they've been fulminating on a particular, problem that they're dealing with for a long time, and we have a solution. So I guess in terms of that, belonging piece, connecting and belonging, can you give us maybe some examples of where different social media platforms, or just maybe one example where you use a social media platform to to deploy that and to understand some data behind it quite extensively?
Absolutely. So I wanted to give just a quick pro tip about doing any level of social speaking. When we're talking about social media marketing and you are speaking, remember that the idea behind a blog post is not to end in a period. It's to end in a question mark. It is supposed to open up a conversation. It's supposed to excite people for engaging and creating a conversation. That's what gets people to come back. And note, do as I say, not as I do. I'm a terrible culprit for wanting to write 2,000 or 3,000 word blog posts that give everybody all the possible information they need at one time. But if I'm guiding clients, I always say, make your posts available to them and engage them in a conversation. And this really depends on the platform. So for example, if you're writing on Medium, Medium gives you the ability to highlight specific aspects of the text and actually inline comment in that blog post. So in essence, you have this kind of much richer conversation plateau, tableau for you to be able to work on. My own blog allows you to basically do the same thing. You can highlight a specific section of the blog post and comment just on that particular blog post. But most blogs are 300, maybe 600 words. They end with a comment field below, and people can comment below it. What you really want to do if you have that kind of technology is you want to make sure that you are engaging people in a conversation, and that's why I said, social content is that conversation. It's the three of us if we were in the same room, what is the conversation that we would have? And if I walked in and just started lecturing at Doug and Barry and didn't want any of their feedback, that's me on a soapbox, but that's not particularly useful in social media, right? So we need to be able to engage people in the conversation. I need to ask Doug a question. I need to say, hey, Doug, what did you think about my instructions for being able to set up your Google Analytics on your website? And then Doug is capable of typing in the comments a response to that. That's good social media because it's bringing Doug back to the conversation. It's including him in that conversation. And that means that he feels valued. And humans feel value. And this is what takes us to belonging.
Join Crazy Kev and myself for all the fun at the launch of Gatton and the Lockyer Valley's very own radio station, Power FM, with an outside broadcast from Spano's IGA Arcade in Gatton. We have a stack of vouchers up for grabs, and just by being there, you could be a winner. It all kicks off 10 a.m. Thursday, the 19th of November. If you can't make it, then lock your radio dial onto 87.8 FM in Gatton, and for the Lockyer Valley, we'll be live at www.powerfmradio.com.au, then click on Power FM Lockyer Valley. Hope to see you there.
When the going gets tough, advertising is a must. Thousands of potential customers make buying decisions every day based on advertising they've seen or heard on radio and television. Are you losing sales because potential customers don't know what you offer? Get your business, product or service in front of thousands of potential customers with a joint advertising package on Power FM and PTV Channel O. Capture a multimedia audience with our affordable radio, TV media advertising package. Stay ahead of the pack by contacting Barry on 0431 390 920 or email feedback@ptvchannelo.com or jeff@powerfmtoowoomba@gmail.com.
Belonging and the idea of connecting, listening, speaking, connecting, giving, getting, and creating a sense of belonging. Belonging is where we actually engage with our folks. So that starts in speaking, right? To some extent, it starts in speaking, but then it quickly grows into the fact that Doug is not the only one reading my blog. Now I have Doug and I have Barry reading my blog. And guess what? Doug and Barry can get to know each other by virtue of commenting on that blog post, okay? And the moment you have 3 people in the room, it's no longer 2 people in the room, but 3 people in the room, you've got a crowd. And that's where community begins. So what we can do now is I can say, hey, Doug, meet Barry. Barry, meet Doug. And by doing that, I've strengthened the bonds of the relationship, right? We know that a web or a chain link fence or any other structure, we know that triangular structures that are connected together geometrically are very strong structures, right? And so I think about diamonds, carbon pressed until they create these structures. These are all foundational to the concept of community. The stronger the bonds between the individuals within the community, the stronger the community itself, the more resilient it is. And when I screw up, when I make a mistake as a business owner, I want to have a really great community that's going to have some resilience to my mistakes. I want to make good on my mistakes and fix things. But I want to make sure that my community knows that I'm there for them and they're there for me. And this is what we talk about when we talk about creating a sense of belonging. belonging. So it's not only engaging with people so that they feel valued, it's also connecting the two, the people in your community so that they understand how their interests align. Hey, you know what, Doug? I know that you like cricket, and I know that Barry likes cricket. And so connecting the two of you around cricket increases the value you both have to each other because of your shared interest. And that, of course, increases your value to me because I have now introduced both of you to this new shared interest. Simple things like that, right? And I usually use the example in real estate, having owned a real estate company. But if I have a realtor who is following me on my Twitter profile, and then I connect that realtor to a buyer who's also following my Twitter profile, I've now connected two people who have an interest in real estate to each other. Maybe a real estate agent and a mortgage loan officer, right? Connecting the two of them helps to make my community stronger by virtue of the fact that I introduce them to each other. That's the idea of belonging. Belonging is creating the connections between people that help them bond based on interest or based on some kind of commercial interest. So we can start to create stronger and stronger bonds there, and then you reinforce that with more listening, that is listening directly to those people in your audience, and then doing more speaking. What did you hear them say, and what can you create to match what they're saying, right? Because people love being mirrored, right? If you are ever in a situation and you just mirror the gestures of the people, the general tone that people are speaking at, you are perceived as more friendly, as someone who you want to get to know, someone who's likable. But if you act very differently than the person who is in the room with you, you are usually negatively perceived. And again, going back to social media follows the structures of normal in-person human interactions. We just take that into the digital space for what it is. And so if we can replicate the language and the topics and the interests of the people who are following us, we're able to create greater persuasion over them when it comes time to buy.
Yeah, that's.
So I think that really sort of rounds it out for us in terms of the listen, speak, and connect and belong. And it's great to sort of look at something like this and I guess in an overall sense, from a behavioural science standpoint, this absolutely stacks up. This is the way we know humans behave, and outside of our little sort of social media world, this holds true, right throughout human society. So I think that's terrific. I'm looking forward to the next episode where we'll take a social media channel as an example and apply this in a little bit more detail. But I haven't got any further questions about this today. I'm not sure, Barry, if you have as well. So I'll just hand it over to you.
Yeah, actually, as we've been talking, I've been sitting here thinking that we often hear lots of noise around the fact that young people in particular are on social media talking about fairly trivial things like what I had for breakfast and all the rest of it. But the comments that you've just been making make some sense of that, don't they? Because they are doing what they would be doing. Doug, when you and I were young, the things that we talked about were our cars and our girlfriends, right?
Pretty much.
But it wasn't trivial. That was what our lives were. That was what social conversation was about. So maybe we need to be less critical of the kinds of things that people share with each other on social media.
I couldn't agree more. And remember that digital natives are sharing that kind of conversation in essence, a public space and in the commons, as we talk about, and just because it's happening in the commons doesn't mean that older generations didn't have those conversations. They just weren't in the public eye, and so we have transferred this kind of conversation into that space, and that doesn't mean that important conversations aren't being made in that same platform or same space. It's just that a lot more of their conversation is had in that space, and we're seeing some shift in that because more and more young people are using ephemeral technologies or private messaging apps in order to talk about those things. They are learning just as we are about how the technology will be utilized. We are in kind of the nascent phase of the open web, of the internet generally, and what we need to remember is that we're all learning what digital nativism will be in the near future. We have, my niece, she's 5 years old. She is born into a world that I could never have imagined, and I love sci-fi. So the reality is that she is going to live in a world that is more connected and more about dealing with the digital commons than ever in history. And that's something that we all have to kind of reconcile. We just really need to come to an understanding that social media is nothing more than utilizing digital technology to have social interactions around this thing we call media, which is just basically conversations. And utilizing that from the things we already know about humankind is fairly easy and readily available to most business owners. And we can stop this whole, kind of mess of making people feel like they can't understand it without having some, great expert, show them how. I've just chosen to build this framework out so people can pick up the technology, learn how to use the technology, and with the framework can easily run with it.
Yeah. Ray, do you think that there is any substance to the argument that social media has disconnected people and that kids don't know how to talk to each other anymore?
I think the limitations of technology are the ills of technology. I think that as technology advances, so too will our capabilities of being able to connect with one another. I disagree that the technology is at fault. It's just like blaming the club for me bashing you over the head. I mean, it's it's a tool. I could whittle that club into a lovely piece of artwork, or I can use it to bludgeon you. Technology is agnostic to those concepts. It is what is designed by the developers. So they are the stewards of society today in so many ways. And what we need to do is we need to actually put a little bit more pressure on either developers or the legislative branches of our governments to say, you legislate how this technology should be used so that we can have a more just, equitable, and useful technological world forward for us. So I don't want to place all blame on developers because that's not true. But the reality is that technology is what we make it. And to some great extent, once it's made and it is a versatile tool, then it is just like a hammer or a nail. If everything is utilized the way it was supposed to be, we wouldn't really have that creative or spontaneous or unique of a world. So you're going to see people use things out in the wild the ways in which they weren't probably supposed to be used, and that's a good thing. There are also some bad sides to that, right? You're going to have fascism and racism and other kinds of things propagate on the internet, on the open web, because we also have this democratic ability to communicate now. We have to manage the good with the ills, but I certainly don't think that social media makes children less social. What it really requires is good parenting and good modeling from adults around them in terms of how to have a right relationship with technology. And when we're using social media as a parenting tool, where we're just putting the iPad in front of the baby so that they'll stop crying because it plays Baby Shark, it's not useful to us. We need to put some boundaries on children. They have developing brains. They are not adults. Our brains develop up until the age of 24. I have a pretty long time argument about the fact that we tend to try and think about adults in a much different way than we do children, except for the fact that we don't remember that we have developing minds all the way up until the age of 24.
Looking for exposure for your next event or function? Take your next community event, training seminar, sports event, official opening, function, concert, or exhibition live to the world with PTV Channel O and Power FM's unique live simulcast. We can turn your next local event into a worldwide sensation for a fraction of what you would expect to pay. No matter what the event, PTV Channel O and Power FM can take your message to our audience. Invite the world to your party by phoning 0431 390 920 or email feedback@ptvchannelo.com.
Have you got a wedding, birthday, corporate event, or even a school disco coming up? Well, make your special occasion memorable. A professional DJ and compere really makes a difference, so go crazy! With Crazy Kevin, International DJ. He's available for all your entertainment needs. Just call 0459 336 832 or email crazykevindj@gmail.com.
Digital marketing at A1 Supercheap Tyres is paramount. With having local search on board, they're definitely a part of our business. They are like having a marketing team of your own. It's by far the most important thing to this business and surviving and growing.
Check out the Plainland Country Markets on the third Sunday of each month from 7 a.m. till 12 noon next to the Plainland Hotel. There's plenty to do to keep you occupied. Browse the soaps, candles and crafts, plus the variety of plant stalls. The mobile dog wash will be on site. Get your furry friend washed while you have a wander around. Take a break and enjoy the sausage sizzle and an espresso coffee. So bring the kids, the dog, in fact the whole family to the Plainland Country Markets the third Sunday of each month next to the pub at Plainland.
Join Crazy Kev and myself for all the fun at the launch of Gatton and the Lockyer Valley's very own radio station, Power FM, with an outside broadcast from Spano's IGA Arcade in Gatton. We have a stack of vouchers up for grabs, and just by being there, you could be a winner. It all kicks off 10 a.m. Thursday, the 19th of November. If you can't make it, then lock your radio dial onto 87.8 FM in Gatton, and for the Lockyer Valley, we'll be live at www.powerfmradio.com.au, then click on Power FM Lockyer Valley. Hope to see you there.
And so we have the ability to help those people, help those young people understand how to use technology, and they will continue to learn how to use technology up until about the age of 24, and that is very formative for them in terms of how they'll use technology the rest of their life. I use the example of credit cards and checks and other kinds of forms of payment. Those are usually very generationally stuck. So I'm from the credit card generation, and I will forever use credit cards. That's just one of those things. Even with near field communication technologies, and I'm a technologist, so I'm going to obviously use new and cool technologies. I still like having my credit cards, but you'll never see me use a check. Like I can't even imagine it. My mother, though, she was born into that generation of checks, right? She has to leave the house with her checkbook. She doesn't care about a credit card. She doesn't care about her license. She's got to have her checkbook, right? And those are things that are generationally stuck to us, and so we need to remember those pieces, that technology is binded to the generation. And so we need to also remember that as digital natives come up, they're going to be binded to certain types of technology, and that's going to make them, from a marketing perspective, more open and receptive to certain types of social media. So millennials will be more open to Snapchat and that type of communication because it's comfortable for them. I'll leave with this. Anyone's favorite song is likely from somewhere between their sophomore to junior year of high school. So if you think about your favorite song, it's probably in those middle years of your high school education, secondary school education. Those years tend to be the happiest years because for whatever reason, for most people, and that song, your favorite song, will probably have happened will have come out during that time frame. And so most people have these songs that they just absolutely love, and it usually happens to fall in between those types that time frame. It's because there are just formative moments in our lives and they get stuck with us. The same types of things apply in terms of technology, and we need to remember that. So we need to be teaching young people how to use technology so they're better able to connect with one another, utilizing the technology. And quite honestly, a lot of kids who grew up with SMS as their best way to communicate with each other was a terrible experience for them. And I look forward to younger generations now having video technology and video and photographic technologies that really allow them to connect in real time and in ways that I could never have imagined us getting to in that way.
Of course, the pandemic has put a whole new spin on how we communicate with each other with technology, hasn't it? And
Absolutely.
And the boogeyman of social media that has been maligned for so long as the wrecker of social conversations has actually become the savior now, which is
it's helped
really
to bind
interesting.
us and keep us connected during a really difficult time. And so it just goes to show that technology can be used well when we think about it in the right context. And that doesn't mean that you should be on social media all the time. So certainly means that you shouldn't be in Zoom meetings all day long like I am. But there's a reality factor that all things in moderation are good. There's just a reality factor there. And the more we learn that, the better we'll be able to utilize technology and to learn how to build better technologies in the right ways so that young people and the rest of us can have right relationship with technology, both in our businesses and personal lives.
Yeah, terrific. Doug, any closing words?
No, that's terrific. Thanks, Barry.
Okay. Thank you, Ray Sidney Smith and Doug Endersby. We will pick this up again next week when we will look at particular media types. Is that correct? Is that where we're going next week?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Ray Sidney Smith and Doug Endersby. We will pick this up again next week. We'll see you then. Have a good week.
Great. Thanks, Barry. Thanks, Ray.
You've been watching Switched on IT, and we are talking at this stage at the end of the 2020 season, closing out with a discussion on social media. These discussions that we are having at the moment, we've talked about social media throughout the year in lots of different ways. We've discussed different platforms and all the rest of it. But this discussion that we are having now is really crucial because it's actually going to talk about the interactions on social media rather than the technical things. So this is a really crucial end to the year. Now, we're going to pick this up again early next year, and actually when we pick it up next year, what we're going to do is start talking to some businesses and doing some case studies, so be sure that you keep your eye out for that. Now, if you haven't already connected with us on social media, the details of our social media platforms are on the screen for you now. Also, don't forget that if you've got any questions, if this has raised something for you that you'd like to talk about or that you'd like Doug and Ray to talk about, or if you have any questions about social media, anything that you'd like answered, make sure that you send us an email. The address again is on the screen. It's feedback@ptvchannelo.com, and or go to our website and go to the contact form and send us a contact on there. We're going to be closing this out in a couple of weeks, as I said. So if there's something that you're desperate to hear about, now's the time to let us know before the season ends. Until next week, take care and have a good week.